Good evening. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Thursday night brings Supermac and Gibbo. Good evening, gents.
Hi, Steve. Hi, John.
You know what I love? Every time Malcolm has that shot, he never misses, you know. Every time he scores.
Jasmine Blacks is my favourite show of the week. And Don says, one of mine as well. Evening, everybody. I've just got to show you a little photograph. Don't panic, lads. Nothing major. Bumped into Gary at the weekend at the Dog and Parrot. And he came along to get his photograph signed off Malcolm. And you can just see that little Bell's whiskey bottle in his hand. Well, that apparently was given to him by Malcolm in the 1974, in the aftermath of the 1974 cup, either semi-final or cup final, I think he said.
And it was it was the semi-final.
The semi-final, that's right. And it was a box of little Bell's whiskies had been given. And Malcolm, you came out apparently and handed it to Gary.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kept a hold of it ever since. And it's actually still got a little bit of whiskey in it, apparently.
So it's now vintage.
It is vintage, mate. Yes, but I did say I would give it a shout out on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Hope you're watching, Gary. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you on Sunday. So, lads, let's go back.
Yeah, I'm just pleased that he didn't ask me to sign it because it's so small.
It is tiny.
I've never got my signature on it.
With your name, it would never have got on, Malcolm.
No, Jim Smith would have done it, but
yes.
So let's go back to last weekend, Malcolm. How good was that? Another 3 points in the bag, and it stopped. I don't like to call it the rot, but it stopped a run of defeats.
Yes, defeats and I suppose draws as well from before those 3 defeats. Yes, it put a stop to it, but. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it seems to be the same old problems, and that is that Newcastle, they're capable of getting 1-0 up, but it's getting that second goal. They just never even look as if they're going to get it, and so all the time everything's tense. It's a continuous pressure on the defence, and we haven't really, apart from the Leicester game, I believe, we haven't really had that opportunity to see Newcastle just at 2-0 up, playing around the opposition, and I really would love to see them do that, where they're playing, where the pressure's taken off. And only getting 2 goals ahead will do that. I was getting seriously frustrated watching it, and until Almiron stuck it in, and I thought, right, well, they're not going to come back after that, Wolves, from there I was able to relax a little. But they've got us all on the edge of our seats, haven't they? The team.
John, what was your take on the game, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I was uplifted by it, to be perfectly truthful, because we've had such a dour time of it recently. I take Malcolm's point totally, because it was proved at 1-0. I thought we battered them up to half time, but it was still 1-0. One slip by Trippier, and we've gone on about one defensive slip in, that's the pressure on the defence. One defensive slip by Trippier where he couldn't keep his feet. They were 1-1, totally unjustified, but it's 1-1. That's the regular scoreline for a Wolves match, and I thought, here we'll go again until we got that goal. I thought we deserved to win the game. And I thought some of the football we played, from going 1-up with what was an excellent goal, beautiful Trippier free kick, great header from Isaac, from going 1-up to half time, I thought we were absolutely terrific, but couldn't get the goal.
It's all very well being terrific, John, but if you don't score,
I tell you what,
you're not making the most of it.
it's a heck of a plus after not being terrific for weeks. I was sitting there and enjoying them knocking it about, and I thought at half time, crikey me, am I watching Newcastle that I had watched? And you know what, guys? I think we were freshened up by the changes. I thought the front three was a completely new front three. Willock and Shaw were the other two. Five changes. I thought Isak was absolutely tremendous.
I did.
I thought he did great. I think the two wide guys justified their selection, and I thought Willock was outstanding. And the ball Willock put through for Almiron's winner was fabulous. Almiron's going to get all the headlines because he scores the winning goal, and we haven't won since I was a lad, etc., etc., etc. So he's going to get the headline. But the way Willock turned, and there was a forest of legs in front of him, and the weight of the pass, and to get it through those legs to Almiron, all we had to do, because Almiron, that's his favourite trademark this season, on the right, coming in, left foot, sweep it in the far corner. The only thing I had to quickly watch was to make certain he was onside, which he was, but I thought it was a great ball from Willock. And I thought Willock and Isak were absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. Would thoroughly agree on that. I thought.
I was so pleased, Malcolm, for Isak, because there was a lot of pressure on the lad. And I mean, us three here, plus the press, plus the fans, had all been demanding that he plays. And then he does. And to be truthful, if we look at it, he played because Wilson, which we've been talking about every week, hadn't trained properly. And as Eddie Howe admitted afterwards, did very well to make the bench because of his lack of training.
You could see that he hadn't trained, John. He didn't look right at all.
No, so you know, the Isak coming in wasn't a decision that was made against Wilson. It was inevitable because Wilson wasn't up to playing. Neither will he be up to playing tomorrow night, by the way, because he hasn't trained this week. So, but Isak had the pressure on him, hadn't you? You know, you can build him up. You can say, we want to see him. Let's have a look. He's 60 million. He's a record signing. He looks to have this. He looked great against Liverpool. But then he's in. And he's got to do it. And I tell you what, for an hour, I thought he was the difference.
Yes. There's the $1 million question, Malcolm. How did ASM do?
Now I'm off for my tea because I'll have time to have it. By the time I come back, Malcolm will almost be finished. You naughty boy, Stephen, asking that question.
It's not me. Don't blame me. It's Paul Watson.
Okay, here we go.
On the ball, he was very good. But I will ask you two questions. How many crosses did he get in?
I know the second one.
How many shots did he have at goal? And the answer was 0 to both. He didn't get a cross in, and he's busy on the ball. He beats man after man after man. He wasn't beating so many against Wolves, ironically, and he was laying it back to Byrne and others who got out there on a number of occasions, which was strange because usually he just wants to dribble. But nevertheless, the man has not got that cutting edge that you want from a winger, that a centre, that forwards and attacking midfield players, they look at the foot coming back to knock a cross in, and then they make their runs into the box. And forwards aren't making runs into the box because they don't see his foot come back to cross the ball. He goes and beats somebody else, or he finishes up knocking it backwards. And he has to be more positive, and he has to think that the most important thing in the game is sticking the ball in the net. And either he does it. I mean, he does it, or he supplies it to others to do it.
Can you get a new tune out of an old fiddle, though? Maxi is what he is, what he is, what he is, and he ain't going to change.
And John, he has the ball for probably longer than any other Newcastle player in any game. And if he's not going to actually create anything other than dangerous dribbles, and sides they work that out, and they can sort him out on that. They'll just get another fella dropping back behind the fullback and force him to go backwards. He's got to be cleverer than what he is showing at the moment. His ball skills are fantastic, but you have to make them a danger to the opposition, and he's not doing that.
What do you think, John?
I mean, I totally accept it, and Malcolm knows about wingers. He was a centre-forward waiting for wingers to do their job properly for donkey's years. I totally accept that, but in a way, I think you're harsh a bit on him, Malcolm. I thought he did better. Against Wolves.
I think he's changed his game slightly.
He's going to be what he is, and whether the Almiron scored in his position, that took away the whole thing. Had a shot and scored, but every time we scored 3 goals in 8 games. Nobody's been making assists and nobody's been scored. It's been a malaise throughout the team, and I thought Murphy played well. And
I thought so.
Murphy didn't score or make an assist because it just happens that way. But I thought he played well. I thought he did well. And, all things being equal, and they're not equal, I'd be happy to go with the same team tomorrow night. The same team that started and let Almiron come on as an impact sub rather than go straight back into the side. But of course, we know that won't happen because Eddie warned today that we've had a couple of knocks, and every time Eddie says we've had a couple of knocks, it means somebody's not playing, because that's what happened with Anthony Gordon. And this week, it'll probably be Shaw because he's already pulled out of the Swedish squad that Isaac's in, and they've trumped poor old Eddie by saying he's pulled out with injury.
Yeah, he's out with the Swiss squad, isn't he?
After tomorrow night, so he can't play tomorrow night if he's unfit for the internationals in Fuller tomorrow night.
Yeah, Isaac plays for Sweden. John Fabian Schär, of course, plays for Switzerland. 2 different teams.
Sorry?
I'm saying Isaac plays for Sweden, but it's Switzerland. You said Sweden for Fabian Schär.
Sorry, I apologize.
It's a Swiss team, yeah.
Yes,
but right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's been an injury claim, and the only reason we know that is because the Swiss radio station RTN have reported that he stayed in Newcastle to treat recurring foot pain. That's the way that they describe it. So,
apology for getting my countries mixed up.
Oh, it's all right, mate. It's okay.
Yodeling up the wrong canyon. It was Switzerland.
But yeah, he's injured. So that's again going to create at least one change.
And so Lascelles will come in tomorrow night.
It'll be Lascelles because he did well when he come in.
He did ever so well, John. Really
sentimental return to Forest for him.
Indeed.
Yeah,
I mean, the only blow for Lascelles returning to Forest is he's not up against Chris Wood because he would have had him for breakfast.
No, Chris Wood would have done the business, lads. He would have done the business. I'm glad he's not playing.
Oh, I'm glad I'll sleep tonight. Now he's not playing because I was terrified of him.
Stick your money on Shelby, John. He'll get a wonder. Shelby will get a wonder goal tomorrow. Stick your money on it.
What, an OG? Yeah, well, I'll settle for that. Yeah.
We'll come to that at the end of the show. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson says, "Hi, Supermac. I've been watching some footage of yourself from the days that you banged them in. Just wondering, what did you have for breakfast as you looked an absolute beast physically? So, were you eating red meat, Malcolm, with blood dripping from your mouth, or were you more a Weetabix man?"
No, I was neither. I used to go hungry.
Really?
Yeah, that's the best way to go in. Go in hungry.
He looked hungry, actually, when you think about it. He looked hungry, yeah.
I love it. Okay, well, there you go. So, short but simple answer. That's what he used to do. Yes, Jury to for life. Any truth that Shaw could be missing tomorrow? Yes, it's really been leaked out, I guess, from the radio in his home country. But anyhow, always keeps his cards close to his chest and
Certainly does.
Didn't say anything about it this afternoon.
Funny enough, just on that one point, Steve, about Eddie playing it. And then the Swiss let out that Shaw is not going afterwards. Yeah. It would be very difficult for Eddie now to play him at Nottingham Forest, wouldn't it? Having told Switzerland he's not fit for the internationals to follow. Yeah. And of course, Callum Wilson's let the cat out of the bag to a certain extent today with his podcast when he revealed that he hasn't trained for a full week. He hasn't said he's out tomorrow night, but if he hasn't trained for a full week and he's played every day.
You can, John, you can see it.
Yeah, that's what we were saying last week, Malcolm, weren't
you?
You can see it. It doesn't look sharp at all.
When I had my knee problem at Arsenal, and I was sort of trying to get back, but it proved that I was never going to be able to play as well as train, and so it was one or the other. And I said, look, if I don't train, you're going to see it in my play that I'm going to get rustier and rustier and rustier and more unfit, and I'm just going to become a shell of what I was, and I wasn't going to have that at all, and so I retired from the game.
You're only 29 as well, Malcolm.
Yes, yeah. To go without training, oh my! It's nigh on impossible to just to keep your touch going, just to keep that your mentality constantly on the ball, as it were.
I mean, that's the reason why, guys, isn't it? That's the reason. I mean, Callum's overall fitness, sharpness, etc. That's the reason why when the England squad was selected today, we knew Callum Wilson wouldn't be in it. Because recently he hasn't since he come back from the World Cup, he hasn't justified it whatsoever. Before the World Cup, he justified being in the England squad. He hasn't done since.
Yeah, it's obvious that he's carrying a problem physically. Bless him.
And that's a problem
to really feel for him. Yeah, but
because he's a good player.
Since he came back from England, I've seen him sprint only once, John.
Yeah,
only once, and then he wasn't too sure about it. So I think, sadly, that this hamstring has become a permanent problem.
I think, Malcolm, it's something that Newcastle have got to address in the summer, because more and more it's looking. Callum has always had this problem since he got the bad injuries when he was at Bournemouth, but it's naturally getting worse with age. And even if does the business, and pray God he does, and he looks as if he's going to, we're going to be back to not having cover there with Callum only fit a certain amount of time.
That's right.
So it is a problem for the summer.
Yeah, but I really don't see Isak coming in as a replacement for Wilson. A fit Wilson and a fit Isak would be a great pairing. Wilson would have his back to goal, and Isak would be playing somewhat deep of him, but facing the opponent's goal all the while. And they would work brilliantly together. They really would. But to put Isak with his back to goal as the target man, as it were, is very uncomfortable. He doesn't like it at all. And it's not for him. And if what I've said is the absolute truth with regards to Callum Wilson, then we're going to have to get a replacement in the summer, I think. Newcastle can't afford to mess about on something like this. It's way too important. We're talking about goal scoring here. And so it needs somebody who Isak can play off of. And then you see Isak at his very best.
Pope, Malcolm says Steve Middlemiss, penalty or not? Now, this was the one contentious issue from the game at the weekend. Nick Pope given, a reprieve, I guess, because, a lot of supporters I spoke to said it was a penalty and he should have gone. But we did a vote on here on Monday Night's Fans Forum on YouTube, and 60-40. 60% thought it was, 40% thought it wasn't, and thought he should have gone. It's split opinions, this one. And I mean, from my initial view from the seat, you only get one chance to look at it. I would say it wasn't. Then when you looked at the referee on the pitch, when you saw the TV coverage, the referee's positioning basically was so far away that he could only go with what he saw from the angle he was at, and he ultimately VAR went with the on-pitch decision. So we're thankful for that, because of course he would have gotten another game on top, a bit like Casemiro at Manchester United if he'd been sent off with a straight red. But again, Newcastle would have gone 1-0 down and would have been down to 10 men. So, I mean, what did you think? What was your first reaction to that, Malcolm?
That it wasn't a penalty.
Yeah,
I thought the fella was looking to make the most of it, and he certainly did that. And he was eyeing. His eye was on Pope and what Pope was doing, so that the fella could try and get his timing right, going for a penalty. And he wasn't bothered about the ball, I didn't think. And so he was just looking for it, and I think that the referee was absolutely right. And in fact, when he sort of waved a hand to sort of say play on, I said good. I heard myself saying good for you, ref. I thought it was a good decision by him. And John? VAR, obviously, the guys in the VAR room, they obviously agreed with the referee. They thought he had got it right.
John, you're nodding your head. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I mean, immediately it happened. I was terrified, Steve, because I thought, here we go again. We've just had, I mean, Nick Pope has been one of the godsends this season. Yeah. He has been absolutely terrific. If there's something, everybody's got strengths and everybody's got some sort of weakness. If there's a weakness for Nick Pope, it's he's not as clever with his feet as the Man City goalkeeper or the Liverpool goalkeeper, who can play like two sweepers. They pop the ball about like a sweeper. And that's not going to be Nick Pope, so he can't get caught. But having sat through the previous home game against Liverpool, when he got his diving header completely wrong and stuck the ball up his jumper and got sent off, and then all of a sudden there's this incident in the penalty area on a game we are looking like we're going to win against Wolves, you think, oh dear, because that comes into play. I think it was the right decision in the end, and so was it the right decision at the end of the game that Newcastle should win. But naturally, having watched Nick Pope against Liverpool, the next home game, when something happens like that, you think, good God, what's happening here for a split second? Because as we've so often said, it's not what we think that happens. I thought, what's the ref going to do? Now, luckily, I thought he was so far back, it was going to be very difficult for him to give a penalty when he was half a length of the field away. And VAR obviously thought it's got to be a precise, concise mistake, hasn't it, to overturn a referee. You don't just overturn a referee because you do it if he's made a big clanger. And the sword is not a big clanger, which is fair dues. And I think over the game, Wolves can have no complaints at all, because the goalers, they would never have scored if they were playing it now. If Trippier hadn't lost his footing, which is what he did, he lost his footing. It wasn't a mistake, he lost his footing. And if that hadn't happened, they wouldn't have scored, and they would have lost 1-0 or 2-0 if Almiron had still scored. So I don't think they can have any complaint. And by the way, it's about time VAR come out on our side and turn the blind eye to something, because it doesn't happen too often. So that was one we were owed and we got. But yeah, yeah, I mean, it just frightens you at the time because you look straight at the ref and because you don't know what he's going to give.
Yeah. Penalty.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Steve. Just on top of what John said, as soon as the incident happened, I looked across to the linesman on the far side, and he didn't look twice. He just turned and started running back up the field.
Alan
So
Thompson.
He wasn't interested in a penalty at all.
Alan Thompson had his say on Monday, but he says penalty and sending off all day, but thankfully I didn't decide it. And the referee's angle, the Wolves player was leaning into Pope. That's why the decision went our way. Dave says, I thought it was a penalty at first, but when you see the replay, he was going into Pope. Yes. Murphy and the last man, Gibbos says.
And he was doing it in such a way that the guy was looking for the penalty. He was looking for Pope to bring him down. And he overdid it. He over-egged the pudding on that one.
Mind what Sparky's just said there is a fair point, mind.
Of course,
if it had happened the other way on, we would have been going crackers.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe.
Of course, it's true. Jasmine Black says Noel Gallagher's first match when he was a kid was 1975, Man City 5, Newcastle 1. Do the lads remember that game? Well, I don't. I was only 3. Supermac scored our goal. Do you lads remember that one?
Oh, I remember all the games Newcastle lost 5-1. No, thank you very much.
For all the wrong reasons. And Malcolm probably remembers the goal, but has a dark
I don't remember the goal, no.
Doesn't. Do you remember your goal against Leicester? Somebody asked earlier on. We've spoken about it on the show before, but of course you do, Malcolm.
I certainly do, yes. Yeah.
By the way, so there were 100,000 other people who happened to be in the crowd at that day.
Well, it's amazing because the number of people who have told me that they were there for that game, we must have had a crowd of 150,000.
Oh, absolutely! Everybody was there. It's like Frank Sinatra's last concert. There was 2 million at it. You know,
yes.
It's the way. It's the way. And by the way, when Newcastle win the next trophy, there'll be 50 million that'll have seen that.
Yes,
regardless of when it is or where it's played or anything, because we all like to remember the special times.
Yeah, okay. Barry, you made that point on Monday night, but I will say he was a little bit upset that people weren't listening as well in the barracks. He thinks that the supporters should listen to the players. He says, I've heard this a few times about certain things at the ground where there's ex-players on doing a talk at halftime or at the start of the game or whatever, and people just talk over it. I'm afraid, we've always had to deal with that, Malcolm, haven't we? Because some people, it's something good that the club put on. And we, with the exception of talk-ins where people buy tickets to come and see us, whether it's you, me, Gibbo, whoever, then ultimately, if it's a bar or if it's a public place, the people haven't paid to come and listen to us. And I guess it's just the way of the world, isn't it? You think people would be quiet, but it doesn't always work like that, Malcolm.
Doesn't always work, no. And particularly with football, because it energizes people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and they have a tendency to babble. That
alcohol loosens the lips.
It's a noisy thing.
Yes,
good point, Steve. Yes,
it does, and people have always got opinions and want to talk. And unfortunately, some of the stuff that we say, I guess, as well, provokes debate. Which, of course, then people want to speak to their mate about it and say he's talking a load of rubbish, or I completely agree with him. So it works. It works both ways.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, halfway through the show, time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay as you go, waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from mrvickys.co.uk or by calling 01768 210 102. Welcome aboard to Fruy Vita Getaways. You can email them at fruivitagetaways@gmail.com. Call or text them 0792 842 7895. Please join and share their Facebook group as well at Fruy Vita Getaways. Book your holidays or short breaks in the UK or around the world with them. Let them find your happy place. ABTA and ATOL registered. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. And the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com, where you can buy lots of t-shirts and merchandise. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the subscribe button underneath this video today. It is free to do so. Hit the thumb up to like the video. It's good for the algorithm. And click share to your other social media. If you do subscribe, we do send you a free car sticker. To get that, email john@nufcmatters.com and he'll post you one out. If you want to join the NUFC Matters cult, then put your smartphone over this QR code now and it will take you straight there. Alternatively, go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and you can join for a one-off payment of £25. You'll receive a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. You can also join via YouTube, and if you click join beneath the video, you will see a variety of prices and how you can support the channel. You can alternatively make a donation with a super chat in the chat tonight. Just click the $sign. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast providers. We also help the food bank on this show. NUFC fans foodbank.co.uk is where you'll find the matchday bucket and you can make a virtual donation 365 days of the year. As always, we've got a whole host of events coming up throughout the year. An evening with Nobby Solano takes place on Saturday the 25th of March at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets £15. Book now at nufcmatters.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley at Leamington Labour Club. Tickets are £20. 31st of March. And you can get them direct from the venue. An evening with Nobby Solano. Good Friday the 7th of April at 4 p.m. Tickets are a tenner and available behind the bar at Felling Cricket Club in Gateshead. An evening with Supermac, hosted by Gibbo at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe, Tuesday the 11th of April. And tickets direct from the venue. This is a limited ticket event, only 35 tickets available, so book soon. And an evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday the 20th of April. Tickets are £15. Book now at nufcmatters.com. In June, Rob Lee will be at Louis' Liquor Store in Newcastle, and you can get tickets direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark, John Beresford takes place the following evening, Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth. This is in aid of the Healing Tour charity, and tickets are available from their website, www.healingtour.org.uk/events. And if you're a boxing fan, the Night of Champions comes to Gateshead at the Fed. Frank Bruno, Ricky Hatton, Nigel Benn, and Joe Calzaghe are part of the UK tour, and you can get your tickets from www.goldstarpromotions.co.uk.
Okay, Son of THC says if Howe starts Isaac against Manchester and we win, I think there'll be things said about the cup final. It's written in the stars. Losing the final, then beat them 5-0 in the league. It's funny enough as well, Bachmann getting the last goal, lobbing it over to here, Son of THC. I think you could be right. Alan Thompson says, yes, Wolves fans were livid blaming VAR. So the other 19 clubs fans think VAR is against them. It all comes down to human error, which is what Malcolm has said on this show many times. Malcolm and John, says Tom Dixon. Good evening, Tom. With the likes of Liverpool, who have got hard games coming up, do you think we might get a Champions League place? What's your thoughts, Mal? Looking at the league table now, there's some big games coming up for Newcastle. We've got Forest, of course, away. Then we've got an international break. Then we're at home to Manchester United. It's in our hands, I think. We've got Manchester United home, Spurs at home. We've got Chelsea away.
I think we're above Liverpool anyway now. They're very much in and out, but so too are Tottenham, and I think it would be possible to catch and overtake Tottenham, but we have to win games. Mm-hmm. So finally we've started it with Wolves. Tomorrow night we have to continue that winning the wins and that once you've got 2 wins in a row, you're on a bit of a run, and the confidence builds and builds and builds, and that's what we've got to do. And certainly, I feel that we could beat Man United at home, but we really do have to give far more concentration to that fact that goals win matches. You have to score them. You have to make them. You have to score them. And if people aren't doing that, then they're not doing their job. Doesn't matter how good a footballer they are, if they're not making or scoring goals, not good enough.
And Europe for us, John, I mean, it would be great to dust the passports off, and disappointing if we weren't doing it at the end of the season. But I think there seems to be a trend amongst Newcastle fans, a mindset that, Champions League would be great, Europa would be good, but nobody really wants the Conference League.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The Conference League, you don't know if you're going to Shetland Islands or the Faroe Islands. I think that just becomes a problem towards next season. Europa League, yeah, because that was the UEFA Cup and the Old First Cup. It's a second-tier competition, so that is not bad at all. The other one, and you can play some very big clubs in there, the Inter Milans, the Juventus, whoever, in that Europa League. The conference is a different ballgame. I mean, West Ham are in the danger of going down in the Premier League, and they're flying in the conference, because that shows you what the quality of the abroad on the continent. They're terrific, the top 4 or 5 clubs in the league. The rest of them are so average, it's untrue. And they're the clubs that go into the conference. So there's not a lot of kudos there. I mean, what's fascinating to the neutral, and we are anything but the neutral, is this season, the 4th Champions League place or the Europa League place is fascinating, isn't it? Because Spurs are almost walking backwards. You'd think they didn't want it. The way they keep blowing chance after chance after chance, and they're still 4th. Liverpool, this season, sensational how indifferent they are, having been in every one of the 4 competitions until the death last season. In Chelsea are nowhere. So you've got Spurs, Liverpool and Chelsea, 3 of the big 6, falling over their shoelaces. And you've got Newcastle, Brighton, Fulham and Brentford, who last season were also ones, actually producing a breath of fresh air this season by challenging where the big clubs
Couldn't agree more, John. Really couldn't agree more.
Fascinating. I think the big difference from our point of view, guys, if I could say it, is that I mean, we think we're fighting, punching above our weight, and we are, having been in the bottom 4 virtually for a decade and a half. We are fighting against punching above our weight. But when I look at Fulham, in Brentford, in Brighton, who sell all their good players, but unbelievably keep going, I don't think those 3 can sustain a top 6 position season after season after season after season. Newcastle United, with their money and their ambition, can. I don't think Brentford and Fulham and Brighton can. They're going to have 1 glorious season or 2 glorious seasons.
The thing that happens, John, is that the manager at Fulham, De Silva, that he gets Fulham into this wonderful position, and then one of the big clubs will sack their manager, and they go, let's have him. He's done great at Fulham, so he'll do great things for us.
And the good players at those clubs.
Yeah. So there's no continuity.
Looks at Brentford and says, "I'll sign Ivan Toney as long as he stops betting." And
naughty.
And everybody takes the Brighton players, and they still somehow cling in there. and are fabulous to watch. But you
Yeah.
can't see them sustaining that level. You can't see Newcastle sustaining that level because of the financial clout to go with ambition and because of the size of the club. With utmost respect to Brighton and Brentford and Fulham, crowd-wise, etc., they can't compete with the 50,000 and the financial clout at St James's Park.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when you think that when Eddie Howe brought the Bournemouth side into the Premiership,
Oh,
and they've still got back even after he's left, and the maximum crowd there is 11,000.
oh,
How can they compete? But
absurd.
they do.
But they can't long term, Mal.
No, never long term.
And never at the top end of the table, at the bottom end, not the top end.
Yes.
But I just, if it wasn't Newcastle, I'd be thrilled for another club to scatter the Big Six, because I'm sick of the Big Six. I think for them to be scattered, they're running scared of us, not necessarily this season, but in the short term, long term, they're running scared of us. And that's great. And I tell you what, that's why I loved it when Leicester did it. When Leicester won the Premier League, there's nothing in it for me because I'm not a Leicester fan, never have been, but I thought this is absolutely terrific. And I thought this will have Gary Lineker tweeting again, but about something this time that is worth tweeting about. But no, I mean, I'm just thrilled to see somebody scatter the top six. And you look at the top six, you look at Chelsea, you look at Klopp and Liverpool. They're terrified to death in Newcastle. They're trying to say what's wrong with Newcastle and why it shouldn't happen, and because they've got Saudi money and because of this and because of that and because of this. Why? Because we threaten them. That's why. That's all it's about. We threaten them. And it's terrific because we ought to if we go back far enough, guys, Man City were nothing before they were overtaken. They're established as one of the top six now. They weren't even the best side in their own city before the takeover. And then they suddenly become this great club. So it can happen, but you go from the situation you were in to a totally different situation. And by the way, we've served our dues waiting. Have we not? I mean, we've served our dues. I'm the only guy that's still flipping living that can remember and supported the Jackie Milburn side, which is our last domestic trophies. Dear God, what does that tell you? And yet we still sell out St James's before this season at 50,000. We were getting 50,000 in Ashley's years. When we had no hope. Well, the two things on was no hope and Bob Hope. One was we had no hope, and the other fellow was a comedian. But it's different now.
Just a quick one on the trip to Hillsborough that we had in the FA Cup, which of course led to Newcastle going out in the early stages of the competition. But there was a safety advisory group meeting, which the minutes have now become available. And the result of it all, anyway, has been that there was 50 witness accounts submitted from Newcastle fans who ultimately, it's worth emphasising there was many problems encountered by Newcastle fans on the day of the cup tie. There was a lot of overcrowding on both the upper concourse and the lower concourse, and it's resulted anyway in the Hillsborough and Sheffield Wednesday having their capacity reduced by 1,000 to 33,000. I think they've objected against it, but just overall, Malcolm, it's sad that we're back talking about this again, especially with the history that surrounds Hillsborough and the tragic loss of life, of course, for Liverpool Football Club and those supporters. Nobody should go to a football game now, should they? And really feel
it must be bringing back horrendous memories for families in Liverpool. It really must. And I think the behaviour of Sheffield Wednesday Football Club is quite despicable. At the moment, they're just poo-pooing it, ignoring it. They say, oh, yeah, we'll do it. And then they don't. And they won't. And they... and Also, Newcastle United, who wanted a copy of the report because it included the suffering of Newcastle United supporters. So Newcastle had every right to a copy of that. They had to go to the take out a freedom of
information
request. Yes. And so it just goes to show that Sheffield Wednesday, they don't give a damn. They really don't. And so it's whenever they speak, it's mealy mouthing, and I'm absolutely incensed by their behaviour.
Yeah, it's awful to hear, isn't it, John? Really?
Oh, absolutely terrible. I mean, I just absolutely support everything Malcolm has just said. Then it was horrendous. I remember working in the Chronicle offices on the afternoon, producing the Football Pink, when this terrible, terrible situation arose in the semi-final of the FA Cup, and sitting open-mouthed as the reports come in, and I had to try to pull myself together because I had to quickly turn all these reports into a story which was going to be in the Football Pink. It had to be turned around that quick, and we weren't certain what was happening and was watching what was happening. And it was the most stunningly awful thing that I've ever had to sit through. And, if you remember, there was two Geordies who were actually playing in those games, both from Wallsend Boys Club. There was Peter Beardsley in the Liverpool side, and there was Brian Laws in the Nottingham Forest side. I mean, that was one of the most horrendous days. And the fact that it took so long to get any sort of justice out of that situation for Liverpool fans, and you cannot repay the loss of life. There's no answer to that. And then have this situation again and have a club again, because it's self-serving. We'll just look after ourselves, and we'll Sheffield Wednesday, and we'll tut about all this, etc., etc. It is absolutely diabolical, absolutely horrendous. But we know that, and we've gone through it, and our sympathy is with everyone else but Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. Not Sheffield Wednesday supporters, Sheffield Wednesday, the club. The supporters are loyal. They've supported failure. They're in League One. Their supporters are exempt from this. The club, certainly not.
Sure. The behaviour, I think, of Sheffield Wednesday has shown so little care that they obviously don't give a damn. And I find that very, very sad in this modern game of football of ours.
Son of THC says, if someone was to call your house a tip, I'm sure you'd defend your home. What you're talking about, this is my house, my home, I love it. That's basically what the Sheffield Wednesday fans are saying. So there's been a bit of backwards and forwards on social media.
Sure, but they must accept that there are bodies that go and inspect grounds, and they have said, why they've never picked up on this narrow concourse where so many thousands of people are expected to go through it, I think I'm right in saying that they only opened 7 turnstiles for 4,500 Newcastle supporters. Well, and it was all going into this narrow concourse. It wasn't enough turnstiles, and the concourse was so narrow for that kind of numbers to go in. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if people had been arriving there at 11:30 and going through gradually. But of course, with football, the kickoff is at 3:00. They're all going to arrive between 2 and 2:30, and so there's always going to be somewhat of a crush. And for them, and for a football club on a big occasion, a real big occasion for both clubs in the FA Cup for them to say, "Oh, we're not opening those certain turnstiles." I think is absolutely diabolical. And for what? To save a few quid?
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure it's going to run and run. Malcolm and Gibbo, what do you make of Bachmann? To me, his passing is terrible, says Dave. He asked me to ask this question. We get a lot of praise for Bachmann.
Yeah.
You know, he's only young. I mean, is his passing terrible, Malcolm?
I don't think so. That I think that what he does is he plays as a defender. He's not going to be the kind of a guy in the middle of the park who can spray it about. That all the time he's looking to keep things safe. And so no, I've not really had any complaints about him. I don't think. And he has, I think he has a real sort of relaxed style of playing as a defender and I think that can be misread by people, that he gets his job done, but he does look very relaxed in the way that he does it.
I think, I take absolutely right. Everybody's form prior to Wolves fell off that little bit. We were talking about last week it's easier to say whose form hasn't fallen off as opposed to whose form has, because there were so few. And yes, this is one of because he's so elegant when he was passing when Newcastle were running up 6 and 7 wins on the trot. He was so elegant on the ball that you thought, terrific. And yes, that dipped a bit. But you know what? I mean, I wouldn't complain about that whatsoever. If I went to Sven and said, I want you, and he said to me, I will only improve one aspect of my game, Gibbo. What do you want it to be? I would say you're finishing. Because on corners, neither him nor Byrne nor Joe Linton, who are 8'6" tall and could wash the top of Gray's Monument without having a ladder, they don't produce a threat in there. And Bachmann was particularly upset against Wolves when we had that. Can you remember the terrific move we had? And the ball was crossed, and Bachmann just had to put his foot through it, keep it down, and it was in the corner. And what a team goal! And he knocked the bloke's hat off standing at the back of the the Leazes end. I was glad I wasn't there because my cap can't stand all that. But that's what happened. And so I'm being a little bit flip here because he does his job that he does brilliant. But I'm waiting to see Bachmann or Byrne score for Newcastle United with a header on a set piece. And I know Byrne's done his little bit where he was like Messi, but with somebody standing on Messi's shoulders when he swayed through and stuck it in the top corner. I mean, I had a look again. I thought that can't be the big fella. That doesn't happen with a big fella. It was so elegant a finish, but we don't do it on corners. That wasn't a corner. But if I want Sven to improve on anything, start finishing, Bunny lad, in the set situations, and that'll do for me. Defensively, I'll live with you.
Newcastle United are away to Nottingham Forest tomorrow. It is an 8 o'clock kickoff. It is their first visit to the City Ground since 1999. Joe Linton won't be available for selection. Neither will Anthony Gordon. He is injured. Joe Linton, of course, has his second of the 2-match ban that he received for hitting 10 yellow cards. Willie Bowley, Scott McKenna, Tayo Awoni, Dean Henderson, Julian Bianconi, and Omar Richards are all out for Nottingham Forest, while Cheku Coyote, Wayne Hennessy, and Brennan Johnson are all still rated doubtful. Chris Wood isn't eligible to play as he remains on loan from Newcastle United, even though the permanent deal has now got past the post. John Joe Shelby and Jack Colback, of course, are sitting in wait and will be hoping to start against their former team. And Newcastle, of course, are looking to extend their unbeaten Premier League run at the City Ground now to 10 games. Paul Tierney, is the referee. This is his third game in charge of a Newcastle fixture. And on VAR is Peter Banks. And as the Amigos will be going out 2 hours before the game tomorrow, I am going to give you Paul, who often does his away day travel. I'm going to give you his section tonight.
With your away day guide to the City Ground, Nottingham Forest. For those driving in, there is plenty of parking around both the Nottingham Forest ground and the Notts County ground. They're just across the river from each other, a very short walk, and parking will set you back about £5. And there's quite a lot of council car parks as well around the area. For those coming in by train, the train station is in central Nottingham. It's not too far from the ground, say maybe a 30-minute walk tops. For those of you who've been before, the Britannia or the Rowing Club used to charge a nominal fee for entry for visiting fans. This is right next door to the ground, so it was very popular. At the minute, it's temporarily closed. Don't know how long for. That's the last update I have on it. So your next best alternatives are the Larwood. This is on the cricket ground. I've been in there before a few times, going right back to the 90s. And it's always busy and full of away fans. There is a Wetherspoons. They are officially not away fan friendly, so you won't get in if you're obviously a Newcastle fan. If you're someone like me without an accent who isn't going to wear your colours, you'll probably be able to get into the Wetherspoons. Nobody will know. Your what 3 words for the Larwood is Tins Farm Noble. And if you use some of the parking just further out of the city centre, slightly to the south, as you're coming off the main roads, then you will find the Stratford Haven, which is a small chain run by Castle Rock. Anyone that's a fan of real ale will enjoy it. It's a smaller pub, but it doesn't tend to get as busy as the Larwood, so it might be a better option if you're looking to get served a bit faster. But then again, if everybody goes there to get served a bit faster, it's going to be busy. Your what 3 words for that is Plenty Moon Rush. And if you've parked around Notts County's ground, the local rivals, their in-ground pub is for their home fans only on a match day. But on days when they're not playing, they open up to visiting fans. That's called the Broken Wheelbarrow. It's actually built into the Meadow Lane stand, and that gets rave reviews from visiting fans, so it might be worth a shout. Your what 3 words for the Broken Wheelbarrow is Notts Laws Will. And when you've finished pre-match, as you head up to the ground, we are on the east corner. And your what 3 words for the away turnstiles is Hooray Friday Expand. Is looking forward to another 3 points and putting pressure on Spurs for that 4th spot.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Paul, as always. Okay, Malcolm, it's, we've already mentioned, big game for Newcastle. It's a chance to get back, back to winning ways on the road as well, and send us off into the break with our faces, smiling and hopefully back in the top 4, maybe.
Yeah. Yes, I would hope so. In all honesty, I just have a feeling that that win against Wolves, it will have settled into the minds and it will have the players absolutely buzzing. And looking to get back on a winning streak, and I will take Newcastle to beat Forest. I've got a feeling that Newcastle will be keeping a clean sheet tomorrow night, and they just don't do it. But I still feel that it's on its way, that 2-goal advantage. So I'm going to take Newcastle to win 2-0, and I'm going to enjoy all the minutes when they're 2 goals up, where they can just knock it about.
Okay, confident shout from Malcolm. What about you, John? Of course, if we do win, we'll play early. It just means we'll get a point behind Spurs sitting in 4th. We'll stay in 5th place, of course, but it sends you into that international break on a high, doesn't it?
Without question. By the way, the guy that was giving instructions for you boys going down to Nottingham, that wasn't Whispering Bob Harris, was it?
Well, he's very quiet, mate. He is very quiet.
I was certain I saw him.
He gets a bit of stick because
on the telly.
He gets a bit of stick. Our Paul. People say that he should be commentating on the snooker. He's had a few nicknames. So one day he came on with a party hat on and one of those party blowers and went like that.
Well, let's have Whispering Bob Harris in the future. I think that's his name for me, without a shadow of doubt. Getting down to the game tomorrow. It's absolutely essential for us. I mean, Nottingham Forest away on embarrassment. I mean, they just don't play. I think they've scored 4 goals all season away from home. I mean, every time they play away, I look who they're going to play, and I think, will it be 4 or will it be 5? Because that's them away.
Mm-hmm.
Now at home, they're totally different. That it's quite incredible for a side where they are in the table, because they're 9 Premier League games unbeaten at home. And that's quite a record. That's a lot better than most of the teams that's above them. They've also played Man City at home, and Man City couldn't win. Man City pulverised them, if you remember, and were 1-0 up. And then Chris Wood equalised at the death from about 3 inches. And it was totally against the run of play and totally against what Chris Wood does, naturally, I mean. And I had to actually go to watch it on YouTube when I heard he'd scored the goal, because I thought, this is unique. I've got to go and actually see it. And I did see it, and it was 3 inches. I think it was a 50-50 bet whether he collided with the post or the ball first. But anyway, that they got a result against Man City. They are doing well at home. Mine, they've drawn 5 of that 9, won 4, but it's still a good home record for where they are. I think that home record will be lost against us. And I think we will keep a clean sheet, as Malcolm had said, but it's not because Chris Wood isn't there to score for him for 3 inches. It's because Baron Johnson isn't there, who I think is a quality striker in a very poor side. Johnson, the Welsh boy that plays for Wales, is a good player. You said he's doubtful, Steve, and that's correct, but I'm told he won't play. The injury will keep him out. Now, I know they've got 30 signings in the last 2 transfer windows. I mean, they've had to build a second dressing room in the City ground to take the overflow from the first dressing room. I mean, it is absolutely ludicrous. Yeah. I mean,
their wage bill must be horrendous.
Eh?
Their wage bill must be horrendous.
But they must go around shaking hands with each other and introducing themselves. By the way, I'm John Joe Shelby. Oh, yeah, I realise that. You're the baldy one. But who's everybody else? I mean, there's so many of them, but they have loads of them on good players. Johnson is a good player. The centre forward, his dad was a good player. He is a good player. He's not playing tomorrow, and I think a lot of their chance of scoring goes out the window when he's not there. And we got the terrific lift against Wolves. Bottom line, us to win, and I'm taking exactly the same score as Malcolm. I'm going 2-0.
Okay, lads. Well, I'm going to make it a hat trick. I'm going to go 2-0 as well. I think Newcastle will. I think Newcastle will
win. Put the mockers on it, Steve.
Hey, I was watching some of our old shows that I keep putting up, and I used to be right with these predictions. I haven't had a very good year this year. You have to be, it has to be said. But let's hope. Let's hope it is a fine win. We'll be back here next Thursday with Malcolm and Gibbo to talk about it and look ahead to England's game. But for now, good night from me. Good night from Malcolm. Good night from John.
Indeed. Enjoy your weekend, folks.
Cheers. Keep the faith, boys.